And a lot of people said Prescott made a bad decision by not signing the offer that Jerry Jones made him, which maybe he should have negotiated a little bit more. But yeah, that's pretty much, I agree with it, because he was only making on his rookie deal, he was only making like $500,000 a year. And they weren't expecting him to start, because at the time when he was a rookie, they had Tony Romo in the first 2 seasons, actually. But Romo got hurt, so he couldn't play. Romo only played like 3 games when Dak Prescott was a rookie and got hurt, and Prescott took over and been the starter ever since. Romo stayed on the roster, and when he healed up, he came back and got hurt again, so he retired. But anyway, Dak Prescott is injured now. I don't know if so those of you who are Cowboy fans, like myself, Dacky boy is injured and the Cowboys suck, but not because of Dak. They sucked when he was healthy. It's because their coach, I don't know what he's doing, but apparently not very much, because they suck. Anyway, just in case I didn't mention Dak Prescott's injury, I wanted to say a little bit about it. All right, we're going to take one last break and talk about something else when we come back. So we'll be right back right after this.
And now, without further ado, the man we've all been waiting for, T-Jam D. Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back. All right. Earlier, I thought about something. I thought I'd bring it up on the podcast. And that's since we've had all the COVID going on, since we've been in the pandemic we've been in this pandemic for since January, really, but we didn't hear about it till February, and then March we had the lockdown, which was supposed to last for 2 weeks, but it lasted for a couple of months, I think. But anyway, companies that make plexiglass their business must be booming now, because you see all this plexiglass everywhere you go. And what made me think of it is, I was watching sports earlier today, and at halftime, they were talking, the guys who do the game, the broadcasters, were in their booth, and they were separated by plexiglass. So it was, one of them was a broadcaster and one of them was a commentator, a color guy, ex-player. But, they had a huge thing of plexiglass in between them. And I think, man, they got this plexiglass everywhere, because you go in grocery stores now, or stores, period, not just grocery stores, and they got plexiglass around the cashier. So I'm thinking, man, people who make plexiglass, their business must be off the chain now. So those of you who need a glass, those of you who need a job go apply at the company that makes plexiglass. I don't happen to know right off the top of my head any companies that do make plexiglass. But I know that there's a lot of plexiglass being used now for COVID to shield, the workers of these different stores, department stores, grocery stores, whatever, hardware, whatever the store might be, home improvement. And even at games, they put plexiglass in the booth in between the analysts and the broadcasters to keep them from giving each other COVID. So that just came across my mind today, that plexiglass, the company that, and I'm sure there's more than one company, but I can't imagine they're not sitting there not happy about it, but thinking, oh my God, whoever would imagine that a pandemic would make our business blow up. Now, they can't expect that to go on forever, the plexiglass company, but they've sure had a boost in manufacturing plexiglass, probably like unexpected. But I just thought about that because every time I show a basketball game or a football game, and they actually show the booth that the announcers, broadcasters are sitting in, it's divided by plexiglass. And I thought, this plexiglass boomers, this plexiglass business must be off the chain now. So maybe you should apply for, if you're out of work, got any companies that make plexiglass around your area that you live in. Yeah, you should apply for a job there. Tell them I sent you. Tell them this podcaster, you're listening to a legendary podcaster. Tell them that I sent you to the plexiglass company to apply for a position. Use me as a reference, and they'll hire you. All right. Something else that I thought was a little bit funny. It's because of the term MILF. Now, I think mostly everybody has heard of the term MILF. And I heard this comedian actually mention the term GILF. And the term MILF is a term that means mother I'd like to F. Now, you could guess what the F word means, but that's what the term MILF means. It's a mother that you'd like to F. They call them a MILF. So, what you're saying is this lady is she's sexy, and that she also has children or a child. The first time I heard the term GILF, though, that was kind of weird. But there are some women who just happen to be grandmothers because they had a kid when they were young. Like they had a kid when they were 17 or 18. And so that kid was 20 years old and had a kid of their own, and that person was only let me see, 37. If you have a kid when you're 17, yeah, in 20 years you're only 37, and you might be a grandparent. That sounds outrageous. But then if you are still keeping yourself in pretty good shape, that you will be considered a GILF. That is a grandma who I'd like to bang, but using the F word, which I'm not going to say right now because somebody might be listening to this podcast and they might be listening to it around a young person, and it's not explicit, so they're not expecting me to have that type of language, which I'm not going to do right now, even though I did say shit earlier. To me, that's not that bad. It's not permitted on a broadcast TV, but this is a podcast. I could really curse up a storm if I wanted to. No one would care. I just have to smack the explicit title on the podcast, which I don't like to do. People don't want to listen to a podcast. I don't want to listen to a podcast with a bunch of cursing and stuff in it. So even though whenever I've listened to a podcast, I've listened to it while I was at work by myself and I had a earbud in. I don't know if that's how most people listen to a podcast, but just in case anybody would be listening to this podcast around someone else, I try not to cuss unnecessarily if I can help it, which I can right now. But anyway, I was just thought I'd bring that up, that women are called GILFs if you are a grandma, which that don't sound right, but you are still sexy at 37 to 40 something year old grandma, and you're still sexy, then you'd be labeled a GILF, which kind of sounds wrong, but because you think about, oh no, not my nana. But it's usually not talking about nanas. It's talking about women who had a baby when they were young. Like I said, 16, 17, 18 years old, 19. You have a kid, and then 20 years later, that kid has a kid, and you're still not even 50 years old yet. So, if you've kept it together, you might be considered a GILF. But the weird thing is, people don't say that about guys. Like, there's no guy who's a father who's considered a DILF. Like a daddy, I'd like the F. Women don't say that about guys. Not that I know of. Not that I've ever heard. You know what I'm saying? So that term only applies to women, not guys. There's no DILFs. Although, I slept with this chick who was 20 years old one time. It's been some time ago, not recently. But she used to call me daddy, which I never said anything to her, but I didn't really prefer it. She's like, oh, daddy. And I was thinking, stop saying it, please. I'm not your father. And I know she thought it was sexy to say. But she was 20 years old. So I was actually old enough to be her father. That's why I didn't like it. If I'm banging a chick who's 40 and she says that, I won't think anything of it. But someone who's 20, that's a different story. To me, that's not sexy, calling the person you're having sex with daddy. I know some women think that's sexy and hot to say that, but I don't ever say anything, if they say it to me. But it's not sexy. You know what I'm saying? It sounds incestual. And that's not a turn on for me, I guess I never even thought about this stuff before I had a daughter, but now I have it. Once you have a daughter, you think about a lot of different things. before I was a